Just after World War II, a body was found on a beach in Australia with no identification. An investigation turned up death by poisoning, a piece of paper stored in a secret pocket of the dead man's pants, with a mysterious phrase in an unknown font, and a book having a code legible when illuminated by ultraviolet light. Did the man commit suicide because of a secret love? Was the man an American spy that was found out and murdered? This is the story of the unknown man of Somerton Beach. On Tuesday, November 30th, 1948, John Lyons and his wife were taking an evening stroll along Somerton Beach just south of Adelaide, Australia. During their stroll, a man resting in the sand caught their attention. He was lying in the sand with his head leaning against a wall. He was dressed in a nice suit with polished shoes. As the couple passed, the man raised a hand as if to smoke a cigarette, then dropped his arm back to the sand next to him. The couple dismissed the man as having too much to drink and continued on their way without a second thought. The next day, John Lyons went for his usual morning swim in the ocean. He returned to the beach at the location that he and his wife had seen the drunk man the night before. But now a crowd had gathered. When Lyons investigated, the inebriated man from the night before was still there in the same position, but now was dead. Law enforcement investigated the scene, and other than the man's clothing not being suited for the beach, they found nothing unusual. They couldn't determine a cause of death from the scene. They also found no identification. The body of the man was taken to Dr. John Barclay Bennett for examination. Dr. Bennett determined that the man died most likely of heart failure sometime after 2 a.m. And though he could not definitively determine what had caused the man's heart to fail, he suspected that the man had been poisoned. The man's clothes and contents were immediately found to be suspicious. He had a pack of chewing gum, matches, 2 combs, and 2 types of cigarettes, some cheap, some expensive. There was also no wallet, cash, or ID, which may lead to the assumption that the man had been a victim of robbery. Furthermore, the tags on all but one piece of clothing had been removed. A pocket in the man's pants had also previously been torn and repaired with a strange orange thread that could not immediately be placed. Fortunately, there was a lead that could be traced. He had tickets to Somerton Beach from Adelaide railway station. This at least provided the police a starting point. As the police investigated, Dr. Bennett continued the examination. However, the body provided more questions than answers. The man was in his late 40s and in very good shape, like an athlete. His calf muscles were of particular note. They were high and extremely toned. Multiple doctors commented on the fitness, speculating that he readily wore high heels or that he was a ballet dancer. The man's body had no visible signs of a struggle. His pupils were unusually small and saliva had run from the corner of his mouth prior to death, as if he had been unable to swallow. The examination of his internal organs revealed a spleen that was 3 times its normal size and a distended liver, congested with blood. His stomach was full of pastry and blood. All of this led to the opinion of Dr. Bennett that the man had been poisoned. However, testing his blood and the contents of his stomach did not reveal any poisons. Dr. Bennett met with Sir Cedric Stanton Hicks, the chair of physiology and pharmacology at the University of Adelaide. Dr. Hicks pointed Dr. Bennett to 2 potential solutions to his problem, digitalis and strophanthin. Hicks suggested that the most likely was strophanthin, derived from seeds from a plant in Africa. Strophanthin was a fairly rare poison that would decompose very quickly in the body after death. Strophanthin would not be found in the blood after the length of time that had passed between the man's death and the examination. With everything that they had found examining the body, they still had no identity. The man was fingerprinted, and his fingerprints were sent throughout Australia with no results. They also posted the man's picture in the Adelaide newspaper, and many people came in to see the body, but no one could identify the unknown man. While the man's fingerprints were traveling across Australia, Adelaide detectives were expanding their search. It was January 11th, now long enough that any hotels lost and found would now have any belongings to the man that he may have left behind. This included returning to the Adelaide rail station, where they knew that the man had been. There, they found a single brown suitcase that had been left in the cloakroom since November 30th, the same day that the man had tickets traveling from Adelaide Station to Somerton Beach, and the day before he had been found potentially poisoned on the beach. The police opened the suitcase, not knowing if the suitcase was the property of their mysterious man. However, upon inspection of the clothes inside, they found that the tags had been meticulously removed in the same manner as the suit that he had been wearing. Furthermore, they found a reel of the unusual orange thread with which the man's pants pocket had been repaired. The suitcase was indeed the dead man's suitcase. In the suitcase, they found a notepad for tracking cargo on a merchant ship by a third officer, a table knife with the handle cut down, a coat with an unknown stitching technique, and 3 items of clothing with the name Keene or T. Keene. The detectives took the coat to a tailor who identified the stitch as a feather stitch that was common in America. This led the detectives to believe that the man may have traveled during the war. The detectives passed on the name Keene to newspapers throughout Australia. They also sent the name and the fingerprints along to the United States and then on to other English-speaking countries. But nothing turned up. In April, 4 months after the initial examination, the police brought in John Cleland, Emeritus Professor of Pathology at the University of Adelaide. Professor Cleland found a secret pocket sewn into the waistband of the man's pants. Inside this secret pocket was a small rolled-up piece of paper with the typed words, Tamam Shud. The police released the find internally, and a police reporter recognized the phrase immediately. He told the detectives to find a Persian book of poetry, the Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam. Tamam Shud were the last words in most English translations of the book, meaning it is ended. The police located many editions of the book, but none had the same font as the font on the piece of paper in the man's hidden pocket. It was now April, 5 months since the man had died, and decomposition was setting in. They needed to dispose of the body while preserving as much evidence as possible. They took a plaster cast of the upper torso and face and embalmed the body. They then buried the body in ground specifically chosen to preserve the body and placed a concrete slab over it. This was done to preserve the body as much as possible so they could exhume it at a later date if necessary. Just 2 months later, on July 23rd, the case would take an even more puzzling turn when a man walked into the Adelaide detective's office with a Rubaiyat with the same font as Tamam Shud. Also, the last page was missing. The man was from Glenelg, but had a car in a parking lot near Somerton Beach. Back in December, just a few days after the body was discovered, he and his brother-in-law were in the car when the brother-in-law found the book on the floorboard. Without comment, they each assumed that it belonged to the other. The book was placed in the glove compartment and forgotten until July, when the Glenelg man read a newspaper article about the unknown man. He immediately took the book from the car and opened it to find that the final page was missing. He immediately brought the book to the detective's office. Detective Sergeant Lean listened to the man's story and examined the book, seeing that the font was correct, and in 8 months of searching, they had not found a single book with the correct font, and the last page was missing. The detective decided to believe the story and inspect the book further. He found a phone number on the inside of the back cover and some impressions of a message that could not be completely made out with just the naked eye or a magnifying glass. He would need help to determine the message, but was very eager to call the number. He took the book and the phone number to the police department that was investigating the case of the unknown man. The phone number was unlisted, but they tracked it to a woman whose name at the time had not been released, but she was generally referred to as Jestyn. Jestyn was a nurse and lived near Somerton Beach. Jestyn was reluctantly cooperative and admitted to giving a man a copy of the Rubaiyat during the war. She had given the book to a man named Alfred Boxall. The police now had a name, a nationality, and knew that he had served during the war. Within days, they had tracked him down. They tracked him down to his house in Maruba, New South Wales. That is, his current home in New South Wales. Not only was Alfred Boxall still alive, but upon questioning he provided the copy of the Rubaiyat he had received from Jestyn, with a note written by Jestyn. Furthermore, this book had different font than the unknown man's book. This obviously was not the guy, but this also wasn't the end of Jestyn's story. The police brought her back in for questioning. Even though her story of Alfred Boxall didn't lead anywhere, her telephone number was still in the dead man's book. Upon pressing her a little harder for more information, she revealed that an unknown man had come looking for her around the end of last year, but couldn't remember the exact date. This was hardly anything to go on, but if the man had a book with her number, maybe she would recognize him. Though the plaster cast wasn't perfect, they asked her if she would look at it to see if she could recognize the man and identify him, and she agreed. They showed the cast of the unknown man's face to Jestyn, and in the words of Detective Lean, she was completely taken aback to the point of giving the appearance she was about to faint. It was clear to all in the room that she recognized the man, but she vehemently denied knowing him. They pressed, but she wouldn't budge. She claimed to have never seen the man before. They went back to the book. Detective Lean had found an impression in the book of writing that he could not read. They illuminated the book with ultraviolet light to reveal a code. The police sent the code to Naval Intelligence Agency, where the best code breakers in Australia took a look at it. The results were provided as... It was here that the investigation met a dead end. The investigators didn't know the cause of death, if the man had died by suicide or if he had been murdered. They also didn't know the man's identity. They were stumped. Before Jestyn's death in 2007, a woman living only 400 meters north of Somerton Beach, where the man's body was found, admitted to being the nurse in the case. Her name was Jessica Thompson, and she had a son, Robin Thompson. Robin Thompson was born in July 1947 and shared two genetic traits with the unknown man: a larger upper ear hollow than the lower, and hypodontia of the incisors. Robin Thompson has since died, but his daughter, Rachel Egan, volunteered her DNA to compare to the unknown man's if he was ever exhumed. His body was exhumed, but the DNA was deteriorated. However, in a positive turn of events, strands of hair were disposed in the plaster cast of his head and torso. DNA from the hair was used in a comparison, and it was determined that the unknown man was Carl Charles Webb, born on November 16, 1905, in Footscray, Victoria. And he was not Robin Thompson's father. The unknown man's DNA was compared to DNA in a genealogical database to build a family tree that matched Webb's. Furthermore, Charles Webb went missing in 1947 after he left his then-wife Dorothy, just 1 year before his body was found. Charles Webb was an electrical engineer that, as far as we know, had a fairly normal life. Though the identity of the man has been solved, there are still many unknowns in the case. Where did the book come from? Charles was interested in poetry. This could explain his copy of the Rubaiyat. However, it doesn't explain why no other copy of this book with the same font has ever been found. Furthermore, in 1957, a 7th edition of the Rubaiyat was found with a dead man. During that investigation, it was found that only 5 editions had ever been printed of the Rubaiyat. The book was a fake. So, was Charles Webb's book also a fake? This led to speculation that fake copies of the book had been distributed to spies as code books during World War II and potentially the Cold War. Was Charles a spy? Charles was also an avid gambler, and loved the horse races. It has been speculated that the code in the book could be a list of horses he used to bet. This still doesn't resolve the unusual matter of the book, or the phone number that was in the book. It was also discovered that after the split from her husband, Dorothy Webb moved just 80 miles north of the beach where her husband's body was found. Did he travel to the area searching for his wife and unable to find her? He went into a depression and the final mystery, how did he die? Poison is an educated guess by the doctor, but no actual poison has ever been found. It is mostly accepted that this was the cause of death, but a definitive cause of death will most likely never be known. Though the identity of the man from Somerton is now known, mysteries remain. Was he murdered or died by his own hand? Where did the book come from, and what was the code? Did Jestyn know him, and if so, why didn't she say so? Most likely, many of these questions will never be answered. This is True Mysteries. Please like, leave comments, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.